Hey everyone, welcome to another Third World Garage video on the Mini Cooper. This is the 1 year update on ownership. I put about 4,000 miles on it, but again, I don't drive it every day. And the reason I don't drive it every day, well, the transmission is making more noise than ever. Unfortunately, that means I gotta take it back apart. Now, the problem is I bought a gear off of eBay from Italy because it's really the only place I could find it for the idler gear. And it doesn't mesh quite right. Pardon my bad filming, but this right here is the gear, and the bushing that's sticking out of the back here is normally pressed into it, but that's actually the problem area. This is the original gear, and this one meshes quite quietly, but the bushing was worn out. And this is actually a common problem with the Getrag transmission used in the 05, 06 R50 minis and the convertibles up to 08 with the base engine. This other part right here is something you should always change when you change the clutch, and that's the little sleeve that the throwout bearing runs on. They're about $25. They're not expensive, definitely worth doing. But as you can see, the bushing will come out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gear, I'm going to order a new gear with new bushing and press the bushing out of the new gear and put it into this one. $125 is a lot of money to spend for that stupid bushing, but if it fixes it, at this point I don't care, because I really love driving this car. Now what is it? It had 83,000 miles on it when I got it. It's got just a little over 87,000 on it now. And if you're watching this video, you're probably wondering what went wrong with it. Did the entire car fall to pieces? No, but it did have issues. Now, if you're wondering why it's not the cleanest it could be, I just washed it 30 minutes ago, but this is love bug season in Florida. And as you can see, love bugs love to splatter all over your car. What are love bugs? The rest of the country doesn't have them. They're an invasive species. They were introduced, I think, in the 50s or 60s to control the mosquito population. And if that's really the reason they were introduced, it failed spectacularly. There's still a crap load of mosquitoes here, and now a crap load of love bugs that love to splatter all over your car during late spring and ruin the paint. And if you don't get them off, they will stick very hard. They're almost impossible to get rid of and remove. You almost have to sand them off because they get that thick on your car. I got a little squirrel there. But what else has gone wrong with this car in 4,000 miles? Well, the air conditioning decided that it didn't know if it wanted to be air conditioning or if it wanted to be heat. So it would cycle rapidly about every 20 seconds from hot to cold, hot to cold. I do have another video about that where I take out the air conditioning controls and fix them. But it was kind of just a problem with the solder they use. It's a ROHS compliant solder, which means it doesn't have lead in it. They replaced the lead with antimony, but it cracks. If you remember the whole thing that happened years ago with the Xbox 360s, where they get the red ring of death, this thing does the same thing, only it's with the thermistor sensor on the board. What I did is I reflowed it using hot air rework, and I do have a video about that. And as one person commented, I can't watch this video. Your workbench is too messy. Well, if you can't watch it for that reason, don't watch it. That workbench is always messy. I just basically use it to fix stuff. And if I film something, it's because I'm being nice enough to film something, not because I'm a perfect YouTuber. I'm really not. Another thing you're going to notice, the white Cooper stripes. They're a tape stripe. Somebody else put them there. I didn't. They're not original to the car, and as you can see, the Florida sun over a year has utterly destroyed them. But the other problem with this hood is somebody sat on it and somebody pushed the dent out years ago, and it's very imperfect in the middle. I'd like to fix it and repaint it, or just find another hood in the hyper blue for a base Cooper, but it's kind of hard because this was an extra cost color, and nobody really ordered it. This is kind of a rare unicorn of a car. I also broke my turn signal, my side marker light, but other than that, that's not been much of a problem. Now, another issue I had, and I'm sorry if you watched the other videos and I'm rehashing this, but this is just 1 year total, everything's gone wrong, is the power window motor failed. Now it's $150, I think, if you get the type for the 05 model. Now if you go on eBay from China, you can order a complete door panel along with, and I'm in the park so this person's driving by, a complete window regulator with motor for $50 delivered to your door for the 2002 to 2004 Mini Coopers, or if you're in Europe, 2001 to 2004 Mini Cooper. So that's what I did, and luckily it does fit. It bolts right in, the connector's the same and everything, and so you can fix it for $50 complete with the, boy, that is one heck of a squirrel there going under the palmettos, and then there's a, looks like a raven. But so for $50 you can get the complete setup, complete with the window track and everything, if you order it for the earlier car, and it works perfectly fine. It's a little slower than the other one, but not by much. If that imperfection bothers you, go spend another $100. I'm just telling you this if you're a person like me doing this on a strict budget, who really likes these cars but can't afford BMW pricing. I also added in the center armrest. Is it perfect? No. These things don't really stay. And so what this is actually is the top portion is an original Mini Cooper part. The bottom is one of the Chinese knockoffs. I took the pad off the Chinese knockoff and I used the base from it, which is not of the same material. It's not glass fiber reinforced like the original, but it's basically molded off of an original, and they're $15 on eBay. This is over $100 if you go to buy it new, and I think you'll agree that it is a budget solution. It's not perfect, but this car, I really can't afford to make it perfect, and if I did, it would just be cost prohibitive to what it's actually worth. The other thing was I did replace this armrest with one that's vinyl out of another car. This is a leather seat car, but I can't find one of the leather armrests with all of the clips and tack pieces. It seems that people just bust these things apart rather than doing it properly in the junkyard. And unfortunately, I can't seem to get there in time. I also replaced the light switch because the paint was all worn off this. So I got another one for, I think it was like 10 or 15 bucks. And remember, if you do that, there are multiple different types. This one here has the trip computer, and you have to have it for with trip computer or without. Likewise, if it doesn't have an alarm, it'll have this yellow, get it a little closer, it'll have the yellow tip. If it has the alarm, it has the red tip, and you have to get the right wiper switch for which setup you have. And remember, there are actually 3 gauge cluster setups that you can get in a Mini Cooper. This one is the Chrono Pack. I actually think it's the best, but some people prefer just the center speedo and the tachometer on the column. And then you also had one where it used the Chrono Pack, tach, and speedo, but then you put but then it has a nav screen, and then it puts the other gauges and the lights down below it. But I don't really think that's a great choice because the navigation system is horribly out of date. Other things I've done, I did have to replace the radio. The volume knob trim pot was bad, and I can't, and it was quicker to just replace it. This radio cost me, I think, $25 at the local U-Pull-It, and then I got a $15 knob from FCP Euro. That's the factory style knob. It was either FCP Euro or eBay, I can't remember, but it was original BMW part. Also, the little yellow thing down here on that holds in the cigarette lighter was broken when I got the car, and so I replaced that. And as you can see from the lighter, if this thing will focus. Oh God, this stupid phone. This car has never been smoked in, which is nice. Now, for those of you who've never owned one of these cars before, what are the bad points? Reliability is terrible. Transmissions are an issue. All the transmissions for the R50, which is the base model, tend to not be that good. This is the best of them. Don't get the automatic CVT. They are horrible. They are a big problem for these cars. Just avoid the automatics unless you're going to swap it to a manual. And if you're going to swap it to a manual, the 6-speed out of the Cooper S is the best transmission they use in any of these cars. This is the best of the worst transmission for the standard Cooper, and that is the Getrag 5-speed transmission, as opposed to the Midlands transmission, which was used up through 2004. Those transmissions, they didn't even bother to... They press fit the ring gear, and so the ring gear slips on the differential and it kills the transmission. And does BMW sell the parts? No. BMW doesn't think it should have to. It thinks that it should have to just sell you a complete transmission for $3,500. This is a $1,900 car. I'm not spending that. You can get the parts on eBay out of Europe, but you can't get the parts new from BMW. Now, looking under the hood, it's one of the other quirks. The hood release is on the passenger side, not the driver's side, if you're in the US or other left-hand drive countries. If you're in Europe, well, that probably fits you just... If you're in England or Australia or New Zealand or Japan, that's probably going to suit you just fine. Now, the Weatherstrip seals have all stayed very nice on this car. It's probably been garage before I had it. I don't garage it because I don't have the space. I have another car in my garage that I'm trying to get rid of. But if I put it out on the street, code enforcement will be called. Now, the headlights are not originals. I picked them up off eBay. What have I done under the hood? Well, looks like I got a mud dauber nest now. I'm gonna have to kill that. I did replace this motor mount here, which is the fluid-filled motor mount, and so that's an issue. And it looks like it didn't start using coolant. I did replace the coolant with factory BMW coolant. Now, I do suggest doing that. It is one of the things from BMW that is actually reasonably priced. It's, I think, $20 a gallon at my local dealer, and so I do highly recommend that. The other thing that I've done, I did replace the strut mounts and struts on the front, because the strut mount on that side completely tore and this thing was about to shoot through the hood. So I replaced both of those, and at the same time I put in new struts from Bilstein. They're just kind of their service replacement ones. I can't remember what they're called right now, but that is what I used, and they've been fine. The car actually handles really well. I want to do the same thing for the rear, but I'm going to wait until I get the transmission working correctly until I actually take care of that. Now, the nice thing with this car is when I got it, the big problem area, which is other than the transmission, which is the power steering pump, had been fixed. Unfortunately, the shop that charged the people $1,200 to replace the power steering pump and fan assembly, I feel like $1,200, maybe it was even more than that, they didn't fix the reason the whole thing failed. And the reason probably most of them fail, which is that the crankshaft position sensor sits exactly in line with the fan. If the fan fails, the pump overheats and it dies. Why is the crankshaft position sensor a problem? Well, it's got a cheap O-ring that seals it to the block. That O-ring fails, it leaks oil all over the fan attracts dust and dirt, and eventually the fan clogs and quits working. And that's one of the main problems. It's fixed by the duct, the cheap plastic duct that BMW came up with as a workaround. But if you want to buy the cheap plastic duct that costs about $5 to blow mold in China, BMW wants $280 for it, or some other absurd thing. And then you also have to replace your under tray. So if you just keep it clean and you make sure it's working, it probably will be okay. And if you do have to do power steering fluid, which is right here, remember, this is not standard power steering fluid. It's not your typical Dextron based power steering fluid. Now, let me show you what you actually have to buy. I have the two special fluids in my trunk. Pardon this slight mess back here. I was going to detail this today, but it's such a mess. This right here, called Pentosin CHF 11S, is what you need for your power steering. Don't confuse it with LHF. That would be the fluid for a hydropneumatic suspension in a Citroën DS or SM or XM or any of those. And then for the transmission, what I use is this Redline MTL. It's not the same thing as the factory used. The factory stuff is $50 a quart. This is $25 a quart. And this is about $20 a quart to $25 a quart right here. So it does take some very expensive fluids. Now, one of the other interesting things with these cars, if you don't know, this package tray, the way it's shaped, well, it will fit precisely behind the front seats if you want to take this out for hauling cargo or something. And it fits right over the transmission hump there. It's kind of a clever design. And there are clever little design touches throughout these cars. One of the things that I do suggest you get, if you go to the junkyard and you have one of the 05, 06 models, you find any good taillights and they're cheap, pick them up. Those are expensive because they're a much more limited production than the older style. You can expect to spend 2 to 10 times as much. And as far as other packages this car has, it has a 16-inch wheel package, which is not that rare, but in white it kind of is. And I'll go into another thing. A lot of people complain about these big sunroofs. Now, I live in Central Florida, like I said before. I love it because on a day like today, it's about 82 degrees out, 50% humidity, really, really beautiful day. It is very nice to have. And I wouldn't say that. I have another car with a sunroof, a Prius C, that I use as my daily, and I wouldn't say that of the Prius C. And here's why. The Prius C, the roof comes up to about here compared to the seats. And because it slopes so much more, it's right above your head. The sunroof is right above your head. And you don't really see any of the sunroof. You don't get the effect. But with this car, it has so much of it forward because it has such a upright windshield. You actually get a lot of that sunroof in front of your head, and it really adds to that open air feeling. Now, some people don't like it because there's no sunshade. There is one, but it doesn't really, it's not a full sunshade. So it's you know, it's not ideal, let's just say, and it does let in a lot of heat in the summer. And you can tint the roof, or you can get a vinyl British flag decal for the roof that covers it, and then you can still use it as a sunroof, but it'll block out some of the sun. And those are, of course, options that you can explore. But all in all, I kind of just like it, especially when I don't drive it every day. I would tint the windows though, but I'm waiting. A lot of the things I'm waiting to do that I want to improve the car, like a better set of tires, because these are 5 years old, and as you can see, they're kind of getting chunked around the edge, and you don't really want to be driving on 5-year-old tires, especially in a Florida car. But I'm waiting until I make sure the transmission works to fix that. The other thing I did replace the hood struts. I did that right away. They weren't that expensive. I got a lot of these parts on Rock Auto or Craigslist, or even like the plug wires, or these really nice NGK plug wires. I've, believe it or not, found those in a junkyard car. I paid $8 for the set. They're blue, they match the car, and they were brand new. And normally they're about $25, I want to say, for a new set. So they're not going to break the bank either way, but I couldn't help myself. I'm a junkyard scrounger. I'm poor and I'm cheap. What can I say? But anyway, this has been the video about the Mini Cooper. Again, just kind of a bit of a heads up on what goes on. Oh, one more thing. I left this thing parked for about a month without driving it. And because this thing is held on hills, like my driveway, with the rear brakes, which is where the e-brake goes, they managed to rust themselves to the rotors. Now, I got it free, but a huge chunk of brake pad stuck to the rotors on both sides. Now, I still haven't replaced them yet, but I need to replace the rear pads. But you might want to keep that in mind, and just don't let these cars sit with the handbrake on for long extended periods of time. Even just a few weeks, I'll notice that they start to stick. So you might want to know that. But anyway, besides that little aside, this has been Third World Garage. Hope you liked the video. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you really like my videos, consider supporting me on Patreon. Or Patreon at Third World Garage. I'm the only one on there with that handle, so if you want to give me $1 a video or something, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.